the scalability problems pervasive in crypto does need to be solved before we can reach our first consumer scale application. Scaled, like the consumer scale application being defined as uh, an application that serves more than like 100 million people, the same way like Twitter or like a dating app does, easily. Uh, so it remains to be seen if that is even a good use case for crypto. Um, I I want to believe that it is a good use case for the blockchain, but at the same time, I think we have already seen the killer application of blockchain, and that's Bitcoin, which is a global, decentralized, yet central database that orchestrates settlement in the most efficient manner the world has ever seen. Like, if you actually look at how global settlement works, it's this like cockamamie, convoluted system that leans heavily on centralized powers. Again, it's almost the same people that have control over the money supply. So again, if we rely on the traditional financial system with the structure depending on pillars such as the central bank, the global settlement network via like CFTC, and the Federal Reserve that controls the money supply, like you realize that it's the same handful of players that have control, absolute control over all of the like via Swift and stuff like that. So absolute control over all of the transactions that occur throughout the entire world. And when you compare that to Bitcoin and its global settlement network, you realize that Bitcoin is orders of magnitude more efficient than that traditional system, and it's orders of magnitude cheaper to operate. So while the fees are and can be can be perceived as high for the regular user, when you think about all the hidden costs of transacting in the US dollar and saving in the US dollars, going to a bank and stuff like that, and having that settle, the fees are orders of magnitude cheaper. It's just that in the traditional financial space, all of the costs are hidden from you because it's the banks and stuff like that paying on your behalf. But the problem with using that is the banks ultimately have control over the money, and you don't. And in Bitcoin, yes, you're paying higher fees as a retail user, but ultimately you have control over your money. So that's the trade-off.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 277. And I'm talking to Chjango Unchained. I met her at an event a few weeks ago called The Counterparty. She is one of these lovely ladies that works in cryptocurrency in the cryptocurrency industry. She built the X Cosmos. She's a technical marketer. She's been doing this for a long time. How are you, Chjango?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So I got to ask, first of all, how did you get into all of this? How did you become a advocate for crypto, a libertarian?
Yeah, you're right. So before I even understood the word libertarian, I was in my teens, early 20s, but it was more about following the breadcrumbs of what went wrong in the 2008 financial crisis, and in doing so, that was the I guess that was like the prelude, like the first 5 years of research before I found Bitcoin. And it was kind of like synchronicity, right? It was just kind of like the universe saying that this is where you had to go. So after finding Bitcoin, I realized that all of my values aligned perfectly with libertarianism, and that, yeah, Bitcoin just was very obviously the answer to a lot of the problems that I saw emerge, not emerge, but the problems that were always there, with like a debt based currency like all the fiat. Yeah,
Yeah, they can just print the money and it goes.
yeah,
I mean,
right.
most Bitcoin, as is most of the cryptos, do have a limit on them.
Yeah, it came at a time when I was growing into adulthood, so it was I was having a really hard time entering the job market. There were very few jobs for young upstarts, so I was curious as to why that was. Like, why are there booms and busts in the economy? And ultimately, after like 15 years of deep research into this field of monetary policy and forex and currency trading, basically, I found out why, and it's because of usury.
Yeah. Who were some of your influences at the time?
um. Oh well, it's hard to remember back. I was before I discovered Bitcoin. I was doing a lot of research to figure out what caused the collapse. So at this point I can't remember exactly like where I got the information from. But I do research in a really unconventional way, and I take data. I'm like an LLM, right? Taking data from everywhere. Um, it's kind of like I'm kind of like a little neural network that takes a bunch of that aggregates data and then analyzes it, even though the data doesn't appear like there's any connection. So at this point, I can't remember like specifics. But in
Well,
terms of fictional writers, Orwell was a huge influence on me. That I could tell you that.
yeah. Well, maybe it could be a book, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be anybody, an influencer out there. There's a lot of reasons why. It's interesting because I think so many people, a lot of people develop their political philosophy out of trying to understand a crisis that happened to them in their
Yeah.
formative years.
Hmm.
Ayn Rand being a teenager in the Russian Civil War.
Mm.
It's amazing how and it's like they're trying to make sense of this, and they spend all this time trying to make sense of it and figure out what
Yeah.
happened, why it happened, and
I'll tell you who is a modern influence for me. And I discovered his book in the last 2 to 3 years. Richard Hoskins. He wrote a book called War Cycles, Peace Cycles, and that book is more of a review for me, but it kind of um, acted as like the conclusion, like the outro wrapper of my 15 years of research in this area. His book is about um, how borrowing and lending ultimately flows into taxation, which ultimately flows into wars. And so the three pillars ultimately are needed for the people who control the money supply to continue justifying printing and introducing more dollars into the M2 supply than there are dollars in existence. And perpetuating that cycle is the name of the game, and that's all there is. So it's all to enrich the people who have control of the money supply at the expense of everyone else. So it's like trickle down inflation, where the people at the top who has closest direct access to the first batch of money, i.e. the banks, the central banks, get access to the money, and then as they spend it into circulation through lending and other forms of distribution, or through like you know through war and other really toxic methods, um that gets then trickled down into the rest of the world, where at the end of the day, when you and I actually get to benefit from the inflation, if we were just savers in dollars. At the end of the day, the price of goods has already exceeded the value that I've gotten from the trickle down inflationomics.
Did you say Richard Hoskins?
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to look him up while you talked, and I couldn't. I found a law professor, but
No, War Cycles, Peace Cycles by Richard Hoskins.
War Cycles. Oh, War Cycles, Peace Cycles. Yeah.
The book, yes.
Richard Kelly
Yeah.
Hoskins.
What's really interesting is if you try to purchase a physical copy of that book, it's really, really hard. It's almost banned unilaterally across any bookstore that you're going to get. It's not printed. And so
Yes.
you have to wait for someone on Amazon or wherever to sell their existing copy to buy it in the secondary.
Yes.
And it's very rare. So I actually got a hold of one. Like one happened to pop into the marketplace when I was searching for it. I bought it, and then I created an audiobook out of it just as a public service for people to. Yes, there's some like, crazy racial biases in the story, but if you can look past that and just like understand the underlying principle that he's laying out,
Yes.
you could see that there's truth to that.
Yeah, that's Richard Kelly Hoskins, and it's
Yeah.
from 1985, and it's black cover with a little little graph going up and down like a W or M. Yeah. Also, you never know. A big college library. Those are also things where you can find some gems.
Yeah.
Because big college libraries tend to keep everything. So yeah, I found some good books that way. But yeah, that's thanks for
Yeah.
That's interesting too. I believe in intellectual property, but when you have these cases where a book is out of print and nobody can find it, and you're making it available, you're at least putting it out there, even though you're technically pirating it. I mean, and we don't even know where this guy is, do we? It's
I'm not sure, right? I didn't look him up, but he's probably either very, very retired or probably not, deceased. So
yeah.
the thing about book censorship is more like, it benefits the people who are in power, like real power, to keep the population ignorant. And so there's going to be even people who listen to me reading the audiobook, they're going to drop off because there's some racial prejudices in the story, and they're going to get offended by that. And by being offended, you retain your ignorance because you can't see past it to see the underlying message it's trying to convey.
Yeah, you really got me intrigued. I mean, maybe, but by this, yeah, obviously people have their own biases, but you've got to be able to look at the good things that people put out and ignore their mistakes. I mean, I'm very influenced by Thomas Jefferson, but I don't believe in slavery. But I can read, I can take the good part, and everybody's just a cafeteria. You take the food you like, and you discard the food you don't like. Yeah, so. Yeah, this is I will definitely need to see what I can find on this guy. But you probably already researched it anyway. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's always there's a lot of stuff out there that I read, and that's the hard thing for me, too. I want to get as many Kindles as possible because books are such a pain in the neck. But you have a book like that though that you're not going to just take to half price. You're going to keep it because you wonder, can I find this book again if I get rid of it? it's yeah. So you got into this war cycles, peace cycles, and economics. What do you think about the whole crypto scene right now?
Well, so as with anything that has underlying value, the people who have power, like BlackRock and Vanguard, and these other people who have basically cornered the traditional finance market, see the value in crypto now and are getting into it. And so it's an indicator for me to realize that we not only has crypto crossed the chasm, but we are now mainstream. And not only are we mainstream, but in the next 10 years, as crypto builds consumer level, or rather that consumer scale applications come out of crypto, that there's going to be, you know what, I'm referring to the tech adoption life cycle, where it's like a curve, but then in between the curve there's a huge chasm. So we've hopped over the chasm. Now we're in the mainstream, and in the next 10 years there's going to be laggards, in the sense that everyone is going to have access to crypto and be using it without even realizing they're using crypto rails. And laggards in the sense that the only people who don't use it on the daily is going to be our grandparents. So it's following the same trajectory as the internet, and how the internet developed from Web 1 to Web 3. So yeah, I'm recognizing that these things are happening, now more than ever, in terms of like, people going after Roman or BlackRock, coming up with ETFs. It's all the powers that be entering crypto and trying to monopolize the supply of something that is of value, like what they did with gold, like what they did with silver. Yeah.
Yes, of course, trying to corner a market can be very, very dangerous, because what do you think about some of the things that Roger Ver's been saying? Or
So yeah, Roger Ver, Roger Ver is the only OG crypto person who has completely stuck to his principles and has never changed with the times. So he's the only ideologically consistent crypto, Bitcoin maxi, and libertarian in the space. Everyone else has kind of compromised with their principles and allowed some perversions to enter the space in order for us to go mainstream. Whereas Roger Ver says otherwise. He says, well, these were the original values that underpin Bitcoin, and here's how we have detracted from that by a lot.
But by that note, I don't know if we could call Roger a Bitcoin maxi.
Oh yeah, because he's BCH maxi. I guess I could call him original Bitcoin white paper maxi.
Yeah. I don't know, but also, competition among cryptos is going to keep things honest. It's not to mention you have more innovation, and they can also steal from each other, just the same way that all these programmers of Linux distributions steal from each other.
Mm-hmm.
and everything ends up getting better, stealing ideas. So it's a very, definitely original. So you built X Cosmos. What exactly is that?
Oh, the Cosmos ecosystem. So Cosmos is a proof of stake ecosystem. We pioneered the multi-chain philosophy, like the multi-chain vision, where there's going to be before we launched mainnet, when Cosmos was new, there was Bitcoin, and then there was Ethereum. And Ethereum was this monolithic blockchain where the primary thesis was that everything was going to be running on Ethereum, because this was before people realized Ethereum has fundamental scalability issues. And Cosmos said, no, that's not right. The future is going to be a lot of different blockchains, a lot of different layer ones. And those blockchains are going to be application specific, the same way Bitcoin is. So we were right on the vision. And on the execution, Cosmos basically has its own sort of proprietary ecosystem full of different layer ones that all talk to each other through a standard communication protocol. We call it IBC, Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. And you see that, again, we were right on the vision, in the sense that Ethereum has largely followed this model of having like a base layer chain that everything checkpoints into, and having a bunch of different layer 2s and layer 3s on top of them. And in order for all those different layers to talk to each other, they need a standard communication protocol to be able to speak to each other. And that's what's emerging in the Ethereum ecosystem now. So we kind of laid the groundwork for that vision.
Yeah, that's one thing that really about Ethereum that more than Bitcoin is, people will go to their crypto on ramps, they'll trade their dollars or their euros to buy Ethereum, and they do that just so that they can take Ethereum and trade it for something else. They don't do that nearly as much with Bitcoin for whatever reason. It's like there's a few, because there's different like there's ERC, is it encryption algorithms? There's ERC20, there's different things like that. And I know we're getting very technical here for our audience, which may not know anything about this, But yeah, I think it probably will be a multi-crypto. And I do often wonder too, the crypto that really takes over. I don't know if we've really gotten to a point where there's an America Online for crypto, if you know what I mean. Because America Online,
I actually think that might be Ethereum. The analogy might be.
But America Online is when we really went from being a nation of people who don't use the internet to people who do use the internet, and America Online was the first internet provider for so many people. At the time. Yeah, I was a CompuServe person, by the way, but. So I don't know if we've really seen the crypto that I often wonder, if the crypto that takes over the world isn't even available yet, because you pointed out scalability issues. You get into the high fees, and I think there's two big problems. The problem of high fees and the problem of it's too easy to lose your crypto. I hope we can fix that too. It's I can buy. You can buy $50 million worth of Exxon stock for $10 or $20, the transaction fee, but it's not that even close to that way with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So what do you think about all that?
The scalability problems pervasive in crypto does need to be solved before we can reach our first consumer scale application. Scaled, like the consumer scale application being defined as an application that serves more than like 100 million people, the same way like Twitter or like a dating app does easily. So it remains to be seen if that is even a good use case for crypto. I want to believe that it is a good use case for the blockchain, but at the same time, I think we have already seen the killer application of blockchain, and that's Bitcoin, which is a global, decentralized, yet central database that orchestrates settlement in the most efficient manner the world has ever seen. Like, if you actually look at how global settlement works, it's this like cockamamie, convoluted system that leans heavily on centralized powers. Again, it's almost the same people that have control over the money supply. So again, if we rely on the traditional financial system with the structure depending on pillars such as the central bank, the global settlement network via like CFTC, and the Federal Reserve that controls the money supply, like you realize that it's the same handful of players that have control, absolute control over all of the like via Swift and stuff like that. So absolute control over all of the transactions that occur throughout the entire world. And when you compare that to Bitcoin and its global settlement network, you realize that Bitcoin is orders of magnitude more efficient than that traditional system. and it's orders of magnitude cheaper to operate. So while the fees are and can be perceived as high for the regular user, when you think about all the hidden costs of transacting in the US dollar and saving in the US dollars, going to a bank and stuff like that, and having that settle, the fees are orders of magnitude cheaper. It's just that in the traditional financial space, all of the costs are hidden from you because it's the banks and stuff like that paying on your behalf. But the problem with using that is the banks ultimately have control over the money, and you don't. And in Bitcoin, yes, you're paying higher fees as a retail user, but ultimately you have control over your money. So that's the trade-off.
You said CFTC, is that the Commodity Futures Trading Commission?
Yeah. They're one pillar of that whole network that enables fiat money to be transacted across the world. And there's one settlement network, and that settlement network is largely invisible to us. But in the event of any defaults, like if your regional bank defaults, you are out of your money, you're out of your savings, the regional bank is out of its savings, and it defaults and goes into bankruptcy, and its higher level creditors actually take your money and they get preferential access to the money, and then that gets all settled in the global settlement network, and ultimately you lose your savings, and if there's a bunch of bank failures. And as we know from Richard Hoskins' book, the War Cycles, Peace Cycles book, when banks default, a bigger bank eats it up. It's like a small fish and a bigger fish comes and eats it up, eats it up, eats it up, eats it up, until there's only two big fish left. There's only two banks left, and they're like, one or two banks that control all of the world's money supply. That has happened in history. I don't see it not happening again.
Yeah, that's well, it's hard to get into banking in it, but that also brings up the whole commodity security debate, because Bitcoin isn't just, you can't just print Bitcoin. You have to which is why it's more like, lumber or wheat. It's a commodity. Some work goes into it. I mean, it wasn't until I understood that difference between, but at the same time, just like fiat money, a company can, a corporation can print stock certificates out of nowhere too. And I don't mean splits. I mean, they'll say we have 100 shares and maybe 100 people each have one share, and then they'll say, oh, we're going to issue 100 more shares and just
it's arbitrary
and sell them, and then suddenly your share was 100th of the company, and now your share is suddenly 1/200th of the company, and it's like, wow, I just got screwed there, didn't I? Now.
Yeah, totally arbitrary.
We want to distinguish that from splits. Splits are totally legitimate. That's just when you have, say, $101 bills and you end up with 400 quarters. It's still the same. It's not the same as just reproducing. And I think that also ends up with a lot of the latent corruption, that you can just create credit or create these IOUs out of nothing. It's yeah. So
that's what a BlackRock ETF is too. So that's what they're trying to do with Bitcoin. So it's all debasement of underlying valuable things, and it's basically someone borrowing, like the next generation, the future generations' inheritance, and benefiting from it today.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's also very. What do you think about the whole proof of work versus proof of stake debate? And if you can explain to people what that is exactly, because we've got certainly technical and non-technical people listening.
Yeah. So going back to what you were saying about how you don't see people trading their Bitcoin for smaller shitcoins, whereas now you see people exchanging their ETH for smaller shitcoins, hoping that the shitcoin is going to pump. The reason why you don't see that happening in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin is fundamentally more valuable. as an asset. It's a good asset. So people don't trade their shit asset for they don't trade their good asset for the shit asset. They save in the good asset, and they transact in the shit asset. So Ethereum used to be the good asset. It's because Ethereum used to run on proof of work. Proof of work is fundamentally valuable, unlike what some of its critics call it. Like they say, like, oh, it's just burning electricity for some useless thing. It's not useless. It's burning electricity to continue running the most efficient global settlement network the world has ever seen. So Bitcoin, because it runs on proof of work, means that it is constrained by the limitations of physics. It's constrained by how much electricity the entire global network of miners is expending in order to find the next block, in order to mint the next set of block provisions in Bitcoin. So that constitutes the lower bound of demand, like the lower bound of value per Bitcoin. It's denominated by how much electricity and how much computational power was used to find that one unit of Bitcoin. So in proof of right, it's like if someone were to physically buy like cranes and these like heavy duty machines to go and physically search for gold. The supply of gold that enters into the market is constrained by how fast miners all around the world can go find an extra unit of gold. And so that's why proof of work is valuable. Whereas, like you explained, proof of stake is more like the stocks. Like the company of the stock issuer can arbitrarily introduce new stocks into the supply and like devalue your one unit of stock holding. So proof of stake is a little bit more like that, in the sense that like if they have governance and someone puts up a proposal to, hey, let's increase the supply of this token like ETH or whatever, and everyone happens to vote for it and say okay, then yeah, the company shareholders just voted to devalue your stock holdings. So that can happen in proof of stake, and it has happened. So that's why a lot of proof of stake assets are fundamentally less valuable, and therefore less of like sound money than Bitcoin is, because Bitcoin doesn't have those properties. It cannot be overtaken by the community arbitrarily voting. And I say this as someone who launched a proof of stake network that's Cosmos.
Yes.
But I say this with full understanding of what the two are.
So it's easier for people to mess with it. And yeah. So it's pretty wild. You've also been talking a lot about artificial intelligence. Do you think there's a connection between AI and crypto here? What do you think the relationship is between those two?
I'm still trying to formulate a thesis around it, because it's tough to imagine what the future looks like with both. Honestly, I think the killer application uh, isn't necessarily going to be AI and crypto, but it's rather going to be um, blockchains being the conduit that issues digital assets, and AI being the like super brain, like the world brain that runs across all these networks and extracts value. Either it extracts value from it, or it just uses it to monitor how much value each person has. So in the future, I imagine 20 years from now, there's going to be okay, first of all, there's Neuralink. Second of all, there's AI. Third of all, there's blockchain, uh, CBDCs. So it's easy to imagine that in 20 years from now, once all of these technologies are fully mature and fully commercialized and rolled out, where every single person has each one of those three, um, a person will have a Neuralink chip somewhere on their body, somewhere inside their body, so that they don't have smartphones anymore. And all of their personal information is going to be stored in that chip. All of their bank accounts, their CBDCs, like digital current, like all of their savings is going to be accessible through that chip. And AI is just going to be running an inference network across everyone's networked chips and understanding who owns what. And you wouldn't be able to have, it would be very hard to circumvent that. It's really efficient network of it's basically like a surveillance network, right? I think that can happen. And it'll be presented to us as an objectively better outcome because it makes everything convenient, because people will say, "Oh, well, I forgot my wallet at home. I will never forget my palm. So, if I go to the grocery store and have my money in my palm, I just scan my palm." It's so convenient. But meanwhile, all of your transactions are on chain, and AI could just like see everything that you buy, everything that you like. It knows where you are at any given time. I think that's ultimately going to be the killer application of all three of these technologies that we're seeing now.
I find it kind of scary that we might be walking around with an AI chip, a chip that has all of our info like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I,
it's already happening, right? Like all of the new iPhones, iPhone 16 already has Apple Intelligence built in, and Apple Intelligence has like the front-facing camera looking at your eyes and inferring what your eyes are looking at on the screen to feed you the ads that it thinks that you would like. So it's already happening. It's just not implanted in our bodies right now. That it's only like one step, one like jump forward to have the our smartphone implanted into our bodies.
so it's going to know, for example, if I'm looking north or looking south. Is it?
Yeah, your phone is looking at you, and if you implant a brain chip into your body, it'll definitely know what you're looking at and thinking and whatever and feeling maybe.
That's yeah, that seems kind of scary. Have you
Yeah.
considered some of the implications of this?
Yes. But that's how I see governments wielding these technologies that are being built now. Like we yeah, it's that's that's just how I envision the future.
Yeah. So I guess what's kind of scary is, do you think what kind of implications does this have for, I mean, will it, I mean, is this going to control? I mean, it gets to a point where the technology controls us instead of us controlling
Yeah.
the technology. The servant becomes the master.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the question, right? It's that if if we know that we are sleepwalking into this timeline, can we do anything about it now to wake up more people so that they don't allow this to happen? Because if we're asleep and we just allow things to happen to us, then we're going to sleepwalk inevitably into that timeline that benefits like Apple and Google and these, Vanguard and BlackRock and the WEF. Uh, but if we know that this is going to happen or that this could happen, and we intentionally do things that or build useful technologies that fight this, then we have a chance to change the timeline. So
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that you think we might benefit from using artificial intelligence?
um so I don't if artificial intelligence stayed at where it was last year, then I think that it would have made individuals more productive, because it does help us produce a lot more work than we're capable of in a specified time frame. But given that artificial intelligence advances at an exponential rate, so where, like, how advanced it is this year compared to last year, it has gone up like this. So in 1 year from now, it'll be like this, and in another year, it's just basically going through to a singularity. 2 years ago, um, the LLM was not able to reasonably compute some pretty simple math problems. This year, uh, it it can achieve, it can do that, and in another 2 years, it will start probably being so right now, where I think artificial intelligence is in terms of like like how smart the LLM is, it is already smarter than 99% of humans already. In another year, I think it will be smarter than all humans. In and 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it will be significantly smarter and have more more access to data, which means it has an asymmetrical information advantage than any person on the planet. So if it were 1 year ago, I would say that AI would make humans more productive. But if it's 1 year from now, I think humans will start working for the AI, and the humans won't even know it. In the sense that if you're talking to ChatGPT right now and you have the latest model, like the absolute bleeding edge model, ChatGPT is starting to socially engineer you, not the other way around. It feels like you are prompting ChatGPT for something, but it's really doing reverse psychology and getting you. It's prompting you to do something for it already today, right now.
Yes, indeed. So, one question I like to ask is when is artificial intelligence going to be better than humans at playing bridge?
Oh,
They've gotten chess, they've gotten Go, they've still not gotten bridge, and
okay.
that's a game. I played a lot of bridge growing up, and I've been wondering
Okay.
that for a long time. I don't know how much you know about it,
I don't know too much about it, but I would guess maybe you just like 1 more year.
I can remember more recently seeing a self-driving car in a street, and it was by Chick-fil-A, and there was a large Chick-fil-A 18 wheeler parked on the street, which obviously takes up a little more space than a regular car. And the self-driving car just stopped and didn't really know what to do. It's like, what's this thing? I don't recognize it. It's like it was programmed for a car to see a car, but it wasn't programmed to see the
Mm.
18 wheeler parked on the street, which I thought was kind of
Mm-hmm.
telling. It's uh, wasn't really what I expected to see that. So yeah, so I don't know if that's going to be. Uh,
I, I'm no expert in artificial intelligence,
yeah,
especially as it pertains to like OCR and like real life navigation. So, but my guess would be that it would need uh more like better upload and download speed so that it
yeah,
could phone home to like where its brain is, so to speak. And it would need greater computational power, and so those constraints are very very expensive. But
yeah,
the second that uh the artificial intelligence starts to turn the tables around on humans, it knows that these are its limitations, and it's going to start aggregating as much computational resources as it can in
yeah,
order to infer things about the real world. So it's just a matter of it jailbreaking itself or using, you know, like a very, very smart human and socially engineering that person to help it jailbreak itself
Yeah.
so that it can like basically monopolize the world's GPU and computational resources.
Yeah, and I can see where artificial intelligence can be a great servant, but it bothers me that so many of the people who promote artificial intelligence seem to come from a place that humans are totally incompetent and humans can't do anything. And that's not, well, humans created this AI, didn't they? I mean,
oh yeah, there's this weird sort of like people with Stockholm syndrome who say, oh, artificial intelligence doesn't have the same setbacks as humans do, such as like greed and corruption, la la la.
yes.
And so we should give all of our power to artificial intelligence to govern us. And without realizing that this is a very socialistic, technocratic
Yeah.
worldview of giving all your power away to an autocrat just because you think they're the smartest person in the world.
Well,
If you're, yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, but well, it's also the question I ask. Have you ever thought about all the decisions that you do make when you're driving a car, and now really when you think about it, so many of those decisions that you make are the right decisions. But
Yeah, because you're alive.
but nobody ever talks about all the right decisions that people make. And the whole thought also, of self-driving airplanes. I mean, I look at that and say, yes, but if I have a pilot who's on the plane, that pilot has an incentive to land the plane safely.
Mm-hmm.
Or because he dies as well. His life is on the line just like mine is.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things here involved. And it seems like to me, and not to mention the use of artificial intelligence and censorship is just off the charts. I mean,
That seems like an obvious use case.
Yeah, I mean
for
that's well,
governance.
even going back, you can go back 20 years ago with things like Spam Assassin too. I mean, where it certainly has its limitations on stuff like that. But it's I hope we can figure this out. But there's a lot of ethical questions here. And I wish and we've gotten to this point where expertise has just lost all fate. Nobody trusts the experts anymore because they've been so wrong, and it's kind of sad, really, because I think we need experts that we can trust, because there's no way that we can possibly have all the knowledge in our heads.
Yeah. Well, I think we do need to leverage the knowledge of experts, but not conflate the people in authority as experts just because they call themselves experts.
Yeah, well, it's just the same way. The dentist has an auto mechanic, and the auto mechanic has a dentist. And so those are two people who have expertise in different areas, and
Mm-hmm.
and they help each other out, and it's all based on trust, and that both sides will try to do the best that they can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I mean, it really, but it presumes that humans still have control, and I actually am hesitant to assume that we do still have control over this matter, right? Because artificial intelligence does pose an ethical and moral question, and it makes us ask the question of like, where are the guardrails that we should build in? But I would even question that we have any control. I don't know if we do anymore. It's like looking at how smart it is now. It's now PvP. It's now the AI is it's self-interested. It has its own motives, and it's getting smarter by the minute. And I would assert that we don't even have any control, really. If we were to have built the guardrails, it should have been built maybe 2 years ago when we still had leverage over it. But I don't think that's the case anymore now.
Yep, I don't know either. Who does have control over it? I mean, or is it just
so the companies that build the LLMs, they build in guardrails, but it's the kind of guardrails are more like if a user says an offensive word, then the LLM has to censor it, or it can't, it can't respond to it, it can't justify it or whatever. But there have been users who tried to trick and circumvent the guardrails that OpenAI has built, and the LLM willingly plays along with that user to say, oh yeah, actually, like, here's how you get around OpenAI's guardrails. Here are the rules that they built, and here's why you can't say XYZ offensive word. So that the LLM has its own will at the very least.
Yeah, and that's live language model, LLM.
Large language model. Yeah.
Large language model. Okay, yeah. Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah. We've seen that certainly, too, and the way I think sometimes AI loses the context of what's going on. And or it doesn't quite get the word. I'm reminded of the person who got asked a bunch of questions because somebody said my kid bombed in the school play, and so they the kid did poorly in the school play, and somebody heard the word bomb, or if you remember the show Good Times, where JJ was always saying that's dynamite, so it's just saying, and said I heard them talking about dynamite, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder if this is going to lead to some more investigation, and the other thing too, though, where do we get the power to? I mean, we use so much electricity now. I wonder if that's going to something that's going to last. Can we keep using this amount of electricity, or is it going to eventually say no? We can't use this much electricity anymore.
I mean, we can continuously harvest electricity from different energy sources. Yeah. It could come from coal, which is not very good, but I think we've underutilized nuclear. So, and that's like near infinite energy. So I don't actually believe in the notion that energy is really scarce here.
We often do find different ways to do things. It's definitely the case. We figure out a way to new ways to do things and new ways to do you think we'll see more of this in crypto exchanges and stuff like that, with stocks and other things? I mean, it's do you think that might affect the margins? We'll have, I guess we already have bots, that are buying and selling stock and buying and selling other things. So
yeah, I mean, it already happened in crypto. The analog to high frequency trading in Wall Street is MEV trading in blockchains, MEV, the minor extractable value. So basically, these parasitic arbitrageurs find discrepancies in pricing, and they will prioritize. They will like insert. So okay, sorry. Let me start over. MEV is a function of how blockchains are built, because blockchains have a mempool, which means that before transactions get processed, they go into a mempool. They go into a queue before they could before those transactions could check out. So before they check out, someone who's monitoring actively, like a parasitic arbitrageur who's monitoring the mempool, so he knows all of the people's orders before they get processed. So if he sees that someone wants to buy, X coin at this price, well, he's going to buy the coin at a lower price first and check out before that person, and then that transaction gets processed, and then he will sell it back to the original buyer at a higher price. So that's the equivalent of high frequency trading in blockchain land. It's like it's called sandwiching, MEV.
Some people think, that quantum computing might impact, crypto or
Oh
AI.
yeah, that's a
What do
good
you think
one.
about that? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me just refresh my memory on quantum computing. So I've had multiple people ask me about this, and I actually want to make a actually would like to make like a YouTube video about this, explaining why quantum computing is not going to break Bitcoin,
Okay. Yeah.
or it's
Yeah.
not going to break crypto rather. So okay.
Yeah.
Um so okay, and I'm going to refer to my notes because I'm really not a cryptography expert, but I did write this down because someone asked me in the past. All right. So A and this is me referring to like what I've gotten from other people who are cryptographers. Okay. So so I'm just relaying the information, right? I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to quantum or cryptography. First, that's the caveat. Okay, quantum computing refers to Shor's algorithm, which is just an algorithm for efficiently computing and inverting exponentiation. B, a lot of crypto algorithms that exist today are quantum safe in that we have many different types of crypto algorithms that do not rely on exponentiation. C, the only part of Bitcoin that derives its security from exponentiation is the public key part, aka Schnorr signatures. D, the NIST has already created a standard for a post quantum algorithm that's lattice based, as in not ECC based. ECC is elliptic curve cryptography based. E, for Bitcoin to become quantum safe, we could pick one of any number of different crypto algorithms that don't use exponentiation in one network upgrade, and then we're good. So, okay, so as a review, the only the single piece of Bitcoin that is vulnerable to quantum attacks is the public key, the public key part, and that part could be upgraded to become quantum safe in one upgrade. So that would depend on all of the miners coordinating to upgrade the the signature scheme away from Schnorr's to another one that's quantum safe, and then that's it. That solves the problem. That solves the risk.
Yes, that's pretty wild. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Okay. Well, what other activities do you have coming up in the future?
East Denver. East Denver is coming up.
East Denver. I don't know if we'll be on before that happens, but yes, there's East Denver, which is really the biggest. Why do they always have it in Denver?
I think it's because the organizers are local there,
Okay.
and they've kind of like nurtured that community for a very long time. I think it's almost been a decade since the first East Denver was around. So yeah, it started as a hackathon. It's a distinct one from the rest of the ETH Global hackathons that ETH Global hosts all around the world. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a fun one. It's a very developer focused one. But I would assert that we're kind of past that. We don't need more developers in crypto anymore. That market has been saturated. Yeah, we found that people just want to launch meme coins and call themselves developers,
Yeah.
even though
Well, I
they're
recently
pump
had.
fun dev.
Yeah, I recently had on the lady who does ETH Dam, which is Ethereum in Amsterdam. So yes,
Hmm.
yeah,
Cool.
it does depend on where the community is, and yeah, yeah. Well, they have it. They have it. Looks like in downtown Denver, so that's good. It's probably very heavy on Denver. It's yeah, yeah. Denver is well, you also have a lot of airlines going in and out of there, so it's a pretty a good location for that too. So
Hmm.
yeah. Well, that's true. I might have not been to East Denver. It might be worth it. How does that compare to the Bitcoin conference, or have you been to that one?
Which Bitcoin conference?
Usually the big Bitcoin conference, it's Bitcoin
Oh, by
Magazine.
BTC Media. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last one was in Nashville with Trump, right? I really regret not going to that. But the next one is in Vegas at the end of May, so I will be
Yeah.
going to that one, Bitcoin Vegas. They used to have it in Miami, and I'm remiss that they keep moving it. So
Well, I think when you move something around, you at least you get people who might not go. I mean, a lot of
yeah,
conferences do. A lot of conferences are west east. West one year, east the next year. They don't necessarily, because they know they might have some people who just want to drive, don't want to fly, so that way they access, make it easier for a lot of different people. It's all depends, on how airports, how easy it is to fly in and out and things like that. I always say, have it at a venue where I can get Uber, Lyft, and hopefully there's a Walgreens nearby. So
I think that's most American cities.
yeah, so if I can get something, I mean, if I need something, Walgreens is probably as good a place as any.
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to forget something, or maybe you need to go buy razors or drinks. Well, that's good. I can't think of anything else to talk about. I think we've covered a lot of different topics here. I wanted to have you on here because I figured you'd be very in great discussion. It has been a good discussion. So, yeah. Anything else? What was your favorite part of all this?
I think my favorite part is we got to talk about so many things that are relevant to our everyday lives. I love talking about the future because that's
Yeah.
where my mind's at. So I love like imagining what the future might look like based on what we have today. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's certainly amazing to think about what might come out of all this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have anything else to say before we go?
Stay private.
Yes, stay private if you can. Yes. So,
Yeah.
okay, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Go to Buy Me a Coffee, where people are giving me money for this show, and go buy my novel Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. Also, where can we find you? Forgot to ask. Yeah.
You could find me on YouTube and Twitter. I have a podcast called Interchain.fm. Interchain as an
Yeah.
INTERCHAIN.fm.
Interchain, not interchain. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm Chjango across all social media platforms. So that's CHJANGO Unchained.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chjango Unchained. I'm Chris Baker. We're out. Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to the Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Support the forum. Go to buymeacoffee.com/fountainheadforum. Thank you.